Alright, so now we're starting the colors. So I will be switching to a little bit more of a technical aspect of this whole thing. So as you can see here, I have a new layer that I've set to the multiply blend mode. And what this does is that it just lets, it multiplies basically the top layer onto whatever's underneath. So that means that, if I have something underneath, you're going to take that color and then add the other color on top. So let's say I have this color plus a, like a dark or like a mid gray, then it's going to be as if I was adding a lot of darkness to that particular color. So that's why that's a good one to use when you're coloring a line art, because it allows you to see your line art underneath. So the first thing I'm going to do, my lines are not super clean, so I can't use the magic wand for this, which would have probably helped. So that's something that you can always do. If you have like clean lines, you can select everything but your characters, invert your selection, and then be able to color kind of like the silhouette of the character, which is what I'm doing now. But my line's a little bit too messy and open in some areas, so I'm just gonna go ahead and draw the silhouette myself, and it doesn't take that long. It's just a kind of boring step. So once I am done with that, I'll be able to kind of like lock that selection, right? So if I lock my layer right here, boop, boop, then I'll be able to draw and without spilling outside of that silhouette, which is great. So that's the whole point. So this is always the first step that you should do when you're coloring and drawing. Create that base layer, kind of like a silhouette, a flat silhouette, so that you can work off of that afterwards. So yeah, I'm just going to do the same thing for all three of them. And now that I'm pretty happy with those characters, I'm just gonna try and come up with different colors for them. So I know that they're not gonna be all the same color. So it's gonna be the same body type, but I'll be able to switch kind of like the color of my characters, in that fake game, or if it were for a movie or something like that, that would be kind of like the different kind of skin colors that the population would have. If those were for like a fairy village or something like that. So yeah, it's always good to have a couple variations to be able to show. So there we go. Now it's kind of like a little bit of a jump, but let me explain what happened. So I just grabbed a bunch of images from Google, images that I thought would make a good color palette for my characters. So that's not going to be just the skin color, it's going to also be kind of like the final look, so once I dress them up. So I really like those colors, and I thought it would make a really cool kind of like color palette for my final characters. So that's what I'm going to be inspiring myself from. And right now all I did is just add a really simple gradient for my background. I put those images within my canvas so that they're easy to kind of access. I can just pan over and look at them. And now what I'm doing is going to the base layer, so my flat colors that I just did, and I'm just gonna add. So you can go down here and click on the layer style option for that particular layer, still the base layer, and then we're gonna go and do a inner glow and set to multiply blend mode, so a little bit darker color than the kind of like a purple, not purple, but like pink beige color that we're using for the base. And that's gonna create us kind of like this nice gradient around the silhouette, basically free shading. So that's a point. So yeah, there we go. And then you can always tweak the colors to make sure you get something that's interesting. So at this point, I'm not too sure what the kind of colors I want to go with them for the base skin. So I'm just trying to make them all the same now, at least make them all look nice. So it's always a good idea when you're creating characters to have a gradient from bottom to top or top to bottom. So wherever the focal point is, you want that to pop a little bit more. And for characters, that's usually the face. so you'll want to have the face be a little bit brighter and then the legs a little bit darker. So that's why I created that gradient. And you can see here I merged everything, and so that's my base layer is all those things. So now I'm just drawing on the base layer. The base layer is locked at this point, so I can draw everywhere, and it's only gonna draw on the actual silhouettes. Excuse me. So yeah, at this point, I'm just trying to give it some sort of shading, so I know I get a better idea of the volumes. Lines are great, but there's nothing like you know, shading it to get an idea of the actual body and how lights react on it. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and right now I'm just using a very basic soft brush, so nothing too fancy. I'm using a soft brush that I have on my advanced brush pack that you can find on my store if you want to for some reason, but you can easily just use the soft brush from Photoshop. So the default, you know, round soft brush, that works just as well. And yeah, so the idea for this, you know, whenever you're coloring, always try to come up with a basic light setup. So just don't do random stuff. That's not gonna create a good result. Always have a logic behind it. So in this case, you know, you have the main light source, which is the kind of like the sun in this case, and then you have the sky, which is the ambient light source. So the ambient light source is going to be coloring the shadows. So whenever something is in the shadows, that ambient is going to kind of tint those black shadows that would normally be black. It'll tint the color of that particular sky. So in this case, there's no sky, right? The background is just white. So I'm imagining that the sky is a little bit of a purple color. So that's why you get that purple on the legs, because the legs are in the shadows. They're not being lit directly. And yeah, for the rest, I'm just gonna add some highlights here and there, make sure that the volumes read well, and play with the colors a little bit. So as I said, I don't know exactly what I'm gonna go with for as far as colors for this particular character. I know I have 3 variants to do, so I'm doing the base one right now, the one in the center. I'm going for more human-like for the first one, so something that's a little bit more fleshy, beige, purples, reds, those kind of colors, familiar colors for skin. And I'm trying to add other colors. It's a lot of trial and error. At this point, I didn't have much of a plan. I know I'm inspiring myself from the plant images that I have on the left, but yeah, I'm not sure. So I'm just trying things. So you can just, you know, since the layer is locked, you don't have the worry of just, you know, spilling over. You can just do a bunch of stuff, you know, try different blend modes, try the color blend modes, try, you know, up here, your brush color blend mode. You can try overlay, you can try multiply, hard lights, colors, play with saturation maybe. There's no right way to do it. You just, you know, try a couple things and see what works. And then you'll probably, you know, at some point have some favorites. My favorite blend modes when it comes to the brush are overlay, multiply, and hard light. So those are my go-to blend modes most of the time. So, you know, alternatively, you could also have different layers instead, and use, you know, set those different layers to the different blend modes. But yeah, I just prefer to just draw directly on it. There's not much going on anyway, so it's not like it would take me a long time to just change things around, like change the lighting, if you know, if I had feedback about that. So yeah, now I just colored the other two images. That was really simple. So you just you know, since everything is on one layer and a locked layer, you just, you know, click and select using the lasso tool or the little selection box here. Click and drag, and I did a Control U, which allows you to change the hue of the character. So you just drag the slider, you know, over a little bit on both sides, and I got something that's a little bit warmer towards red. So I get that purple color, and something that's a little, actually, you know, it's the opposite. Something that's a little bit colder towards the blue, and then something that's a little bit warmer towards the yellow down. So I get this kind of like a turquoise blue green look. So yeah, I thought those three were pretty different, like different enough, but similar enough in the sense that they all have like a shared color. So, you know, this one, the center one, her legs starting to go towards the purple, which is the top of this one's body. And then the purple on the leg is also found on this one a little bit. So they all share that purple, which I think is a good link between all three of them. And yeah, now I wanted to have like the stomach here, like the belly, kind of glowy, as if they had something within them that was glowing. So that's what this is right now. Not fleshed out completely, so it's not super obvious what it is, but I'm telling you. So yeah, that's what I was going for. And yeah, so I'm doing the same thing with the other ones. So I'm just shading them all at the same time at this point. So I did, you know, very rough shading on the middle one. Now I'm just doing the other ones as well, kind of like going back and forth, shading them as much as I can, little by little. So that's you know, that's an approach that that you get by working in the industry for a little while. When you see the deadline approaching, you don't want to have like one character all done and then the other two like not done at all. So you kind of you know, take the habit of working on all of them at the same time, so little by little, so that they're all at the same kind of like finish level. So that if you're caught you know, out of time, at least yeah, at least it doesn't look ridiculous. Yeah, again, so layer locked. I'm just using a soft brush again to add those splashes of colors. So yeah, very simple. So as you can see here, the more highlights at the top of the character, and then for the faces, and actually all the skin colors are gonna end up having more of a like not bloody, but like a warmer tone. Because otherwise it doesn't look like skin too much. So if you go like completely blue without any hint of, you know, like reds or yellows or anything like that, like any hint of a warmer color, it looks very strange, like it doesn't look alive. So that's why all my faces are going to be pretty much the same, like either warm purple or pink or just beige. Yeah, just starting to give them a little bit of makeup, starting to refine their face just a little bit. So we're getting close now, but it would be a good time to go get some feedback, because we have, you know, we have something that's good enough that people can get a good idea of what the direction is already. So now would be a good time to go get some feedback. And what I just did now is just pop a new layer. I called it skin, and that's a layer with a normal blend mode, as you can see. So I'm just going to be drawing over everything at this point. So this is going to erase, slowly start to erase my lines, which is yeah, which is what's gonna happen in the end when I finish polishing those up. So you could easily, you know, have the lines just be on top of everything, but my lines were a little bit thick here in the face area, and I wanted to refine the face a little bit more, to have a little bit more details, a little bit more shading information on there. So that's why I have this other layer kind of on top of everything to add that final level of polish. You definitely don't need it, especially if you're in a hurry, or if you're just iterating. But yeah, in this case I wanted to use that opportunity to not only create color variations for these and like just like base looks, but also try to refine their faces so that I could get face variations out of this exercise. So if I were to model them in 3D, I would have a good start, you know, on the face. They would all woo, all have their own kind of particular facial features that I could start with. not just generic faces, all of them. So that's why. So this is kind of what I'm doing now. So yeah, zooming in and starting to add a little bit more details on those faces. So that's something that a 3D artist could potentially work off of a little bit better. So here I'm using a mix of the soft brush and my square brush. That's another one that can be found on my store. You know, in my starter brush set, I believe it's in there. But you can easily, you know, make your own brushes, which is always recommended, because then they're you know, custom to you. They serve you best when you make them. And you saw me flip the drawing here. I think, I'm not sure it's the first time, maybe not, probably not. But the reason why I do flip the images like this, back and forth, is I don't know if you've ever done this when you were maybe younger or something, but you know, when you draw on a paper, like on a sheet of paper, often what I would find myself doing is just you flip the paper and you kind of look at it through, you know, you kind of like try to see the line art through the paper by looking at a light source, just to see if it looks okay from the other side, the other direction. Because what happens when you look at art or at anything, you know, anything that you do from one perspective for too long, your brain kind of gets used to it. It gets used to some of the mistakes that might slip in. And when you flip it like this, when you flip the canvas horizontally, it resets that perception. So suddenly things that you thought were okay, you'll flip them and you'll see the face is all deformed, like, oh, what's going on? And that's very similar to your own face. So if you're used to looking at yourself in the mirror, try looking at yourself in a inverted mirror. So not, let's say you're looking at, you know, your webcam can do that. So try to look at yourself through the webcam, basically the same point of view, the same angle as other people would see you, and you'll see you do not look like yourself. It's like the weirdest thing, and that's just because, you know, your entire life you've been used to looking at yourself, a reflection of yourself, so the inverted version of your face, and you've gotten used to all your flaws. And I'm sad to say that most people have flaws, and then you notice those really quickly when you look at yourself, you know, from a different perspective. So same thing applies here with drawing. So you want to flip as much as possible, as often as possible, just to make sure that you don't get used to anything and you don't get used to any flaws. Because, you know, unlike your face, you know, when it's your drawing, you can actually change it. So it's a good thing. So as you can see here, I'm working on some highlights just to give a good idea, some more dramatic highlights, you know, around the neck, just to give a good idea of the anatomy. You know, it's just real anatomy. Those are like the clavicles and then the neck muscles. Just making sure that those are situated in space as best as possible. I'm not drawing the entire anatomy, all the different muscles of my character, but that's something I actually recommend. So I drew some of it, as you can see, and I erased a little bit. But yeah, if you're not, you know, if you're practicing for the sake of practice, I would highly recommend that you just draw all the muscles on your character when you're drawing the naked body. Even if you're drawing even if your character is going to be fully dressed, just draw the naked version first. Draw all the muscles on it to make sure that everything works with each other, because, you know, once you have like one muscle connecting to another muscle that's really easy to check if it works or not. When you don't have those kind of reference points or reference like volumes, shapes, it makes it a lot harder to make sure that your anatomy is proper. So yeah, that's something I've always done. You just draw the anatomy first, draw the muscle anatomy. If you want to draw the skeleton first, that's even better. And then you just, you know, you draw kind of like the flesh over it, and then you can erase, you know, most of the muscle lines that you drew, and what remains should be pretty damn accurate. So yeah, just working with colors at this point, tweaking the anatomy a little bit. You know, when you do that exercise where you're painting in volumes as opposed to just lines, you notice some mistakes, and that's what I'm kind of correcting along the way. And which is another reason why it's good to have that layer above everything, because my lines are not they're not perfect, so I'm able to correct them by just painting over it, and then slowly the lines will disappear, and it'll look you'll get that more painterly look for the character, which is something I like. But that's yeah, that's just personal tastes. You could easily just be weird. You could easily just rework like the lines underneath before you you know, move on to colors. So you can see here in my color choices, I tried to go with a lot of complementary colors, and I tried to go with as broad a range I possibly can. So, you know, if I can put all the colors of the rainbow on my character, then I will. I'm not saying put them all at the same saturation, but try to put as much as possible, and you know, desaturate most of them. But this way you have like a really nice range of colors, and it gives this really rich feel to the overall character. So for example, you know, if I'm going very saturated with my oranges, then I want to have maybe some very desaturated blues for my shadows. Maybe even go to desaturated greens here and there. A little bit of turquoise, maybe a little bit of pink for the highlights. So you can go pretty wide, and still make it you know, make it okay to look at, not looking like a rainbow. So one thing that I always say, I think in all my tutorials, and I think it's very important to mention it here again, especially since this is for you know, supposed to be more of a complete look at concept art and what it is to be a concept artist. Always progress, always get better, and the way you get better is by looking at reference. So you'll never get better if you're just trying to remember things. That's just, you're just working your memory, which is good. You know, you can get better at recalling things faster, which is another skill that's, you know, good to have. But if you want to improve, actually improve your notions, improve your understanding of things, of shapes, of colors, of whatever, use references. So, you know, pop open Google, or take your own photos or whatever it is, but use references whenever you work. Always, because when you're not using references, you're not improving. So yeah, super important. Like what we're doing now is it's an example of what you would do at work, but since this, you know, since the goal of this whole thing is to eventually find work, if you don't have any, try to do it the proper way, and try to you know, there's no even in the industry, I think a lot of people believe like you need to do everything on your own, like everything has to come come out of your brain. But that's not true. Like people, you know, especially on productions, you have a certain timeline, so you can't waste time. You can't try to do everything on your own. That's just not gonna cut it. You're not gonna have time. So every artist I know just use a bunch of references all the time. Just, you know, there's stuff that you don't know, so find a good reference and then learn it while you're doing it. There's no shame whatsoever in doing that. And yeah, I'm more on the opposite. So, you know, if you're home, if you're working on a piece like this for you know, for your portfolio, you want to make sure that it's accurate. You want to make sure that the quality is good. So use references. Don't copy, but use references. Inspire yourself from a bunch of different things. Create your own as a result. Yeah, references. So for this particular character now, what I'm just doing is adding a bunch of colors in the hair, because the original one had some. So I had some, like it went from pink to dark purple to black almost. So that's what I'm adding back onto this one. I thought it was a cool kind of touch of color. It was kind of unique. So that's what I'm trying to recreate in this version. So this is a fun part, right? I'm just rendering at this point. So the design work is mostly done, is just rendering things out, making them pretty, so that it's easier to sell. That's something that's it's kind of crappy, but in the industry, it's better if it's pretty because it sells. It's an easier pitch. People tend to be lazy, like when you're showing this to a designer, if they can't see kind of like the final result, they're not as easily sold on your idea. So having all those final touches, like easy touches that just make it pop a lot, like those highlights that I'm doing right now, those rims of light, it just helps sell the whole package. It's kind of like if you're selling your house, or selling your house, and then you have an open visit, and in one case you just didn't clean your house. The house is the same, the inside is the same, but you didn't clean anything. It's just kind of like a mess, and you have a bunch of dishes out, and it just looks like a kind of like a mess. Imagine that versus someone who just is the same house, the exact same thing, it just cleaned up and kind of arranged everything really nicely. Which one do you think will sell best, even though it's the same thing, and even though the buyer should be able to tell that it's the same thing, it's the same frame, it's the same house. Whatever goes inside of it doesn't really matter, but people are just more easily impressed when it looks nice. So that's why I'm doing this step, and that's why you probably should too, because it works for portfolios and it works for real life game art and movie art when you're in production. So yeah, the main character, as you can see here, the one, the pink one, is looking pretty good. Like you can't really see the line art anymore, which is nice. It gives this cool painterly look. You can start to imagine what it would look like in 3D because you get some nice volumes on her. So that's at a good spot. So I'd be pretty happy with this one, and I am pretty happy with this one. So I'm moving on to the other ones, the other two. I wanted to do the first one here, push it just a little bit more to see what it could be, right? What could be the benchmark, and that's going to be the benchmark for the other two. So I know that I don't need to push it too much, but what I did now is sufficient. It gives a good read, gives a good idea of the character. So I'm going to do something similar for the other two. And so this is the time where you kind of you try to push their differences a little bit more. So the line art itself was pretty different, not pretty different, different enough. But now is the time where you can tweak their makeup, change their faces a little bit, tweak their haircut so that they're different as much as possible. So the little like stems on the head. This one is going to have 2, the other one's going to have 3 or 4, and then she's going to have those kind of like ball-looking stems on the side of her head. Just a different variation. That's the kind of thing where once you're done with those variations, you go get feedback, see if some of them people liked. If they don't, then you come back and you try a bunch of different ones, then get feedback again. So yeah, I'm doing exactly the same step on this one, just making her a little bit more polished, so that it's an easier sell. So I could stop now, and if you squint, there wouldn't be much difference between now and the time that I'm done. But if we're working on portfolio pieces, which is what we are doing now, since we're not in actual production, then you want to have the wow factor. So that's I guess that's the main difference between somebody that actually works in the industry and somebody who doesn't. The one that doesn't has to put a little bit more polish into everything, just so that people know kind of like the potential, right? So if you're working in a production already and you have a bunch of characters that you need to make, you can't always hit a certain level of quality, and that's not expected of you. But if you are looking for a job, if you're working on portfolio piece, you have to you have to push a little bit more. You have to push a little bit more than the people that are actually doing the job, so that you can possibly take their spot or get hired as as colleagues. So that's an interesting thing to consider, while you're working on your own stuff. Sure, you want to make it as close as possible to what you would do in a production, just so that you get used to it, and it doesn't seem like something that's too alien when you actually get the job and start to do it. So most of it is just getting used to redoing things and doing different variations of things that you've already done, and then different basically variations, and then working off of feedback and that kind of stuff. So that's the core of the practice. But you want to make cool art, stuff that people are gonna want to share, and the more they share it, the more likely it'll come under the right eye that will be in a position to give you a job. So back in the days, that wasn't really a thing. Like, if you could get in a book, that'd be cool. Like get in a magazine, like Imagine Effects. I got so excited when I got to do that. But now the easier ways to get a job is just to get noticed online. No, not in a magazine, but get noticed online, because it's just so easy. People just they see something that they like, they're gonna share it, and then more people are gonna share it, and then share it, and then share it, and then at some point everybody's seen it. So it's just a very quick way, a very easy way for you to get seen by the right people. And if that happens over and over again, then they might pique their interest. But we're gonna be talking about that a little bit later. So now going back to what we're doing here, I'm working on moving on to the third character. I'm gonna do the same thing, kind of polish her up a little bit, make sure all the volumes read well. At the same time, kind of correcting the anatomy if I find some mistakes while I'm working on those volumes. So yeah, just a little bit more of the same. So yeah, for the next couple minutes, I'm gonna try to run you guys through what it was like getting my first job, and those first couple days. So as we progress through the tutorial, I'm gonna kind of move up, as the years went by, and try to explain my experience as much as I can. So when I first joined, actually before I first joined, so how did I get my first job, right? So there's many ways that you can get your foot in the door, but the easiest by far is just to get noticed enough that people come to you and are interested already, right? So that's kind of what happened for me. So I was I didn't really know what to do with my career. I knew that art was the thing, and I was getting more and more traffic on my DeviantArt page, because that was the thing back then. Now there's just so many more, but that's kind of what got me going, right? So I saw that there was potential, that something was happening, something was growing. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew there was some growth, so it would probably lead to somewhere good at some point. So that's what kept me going. So I had so that's why I recommend that you post your stuff somewhere where you can see some growth of interest from other people. So I was getting more and more, you know, interest on each of my paintings, and that got me really motivated. So I kept doing it more and more and more. And yeah, at some point I just got an email out of nowhere, and that was after. So to be fair, that was after being featured in a magazine, Imagine Effects, which is back in the day was pretty much the biggest art magazine to be in. So it was right after that, and I had been the magazine had came out, and then I had a little bit more traffic on my page than usual because of it, thanks to it. And it wasn't too long after that I got I got an email from an art director at A2M, a company that I had no idea even existed before. That was back in Montreal, and yeah, the email just said, "Hey, I really like your stuff. We're building a small team. Would you be interested?" So at that point, I hadn't even considered video games as a potential career. So you know, my school was really crap, and I dropped out because it wasn't that good. Teachers weren't really helpful. None of them actually had been in the game industry. So there was really no experience there that I could learn from. So all I had been doing is just kind of stuff on my own. So I would do my homeworks and then get done with it, and then, you know, work at home for many extra hours on my own stuff, creating things that I liked, that I thought was cool. And of course, the things that I liked were all video games related. So my art was heavily inspired by that, which actually made a lot of sense, right? So a game company contacted me because of that. So that's kind of what happened. So I got that email, and then back then I was still in school, and I didn't want to quit. You know, I had been thought that, you know, I should at least finish school, whatever I was doing, and then work, because that was the normal thing to do. So I said, sure, you know, I'll come in, I'll do an art test. So I did an art test, sent it in. It wasn't that great. It was actually, looking back at it, it was pretty bad, but it was a small team. You know, they didn't really care. It wasn't the production. It was a pre-prod, so they were just looking for artists, different kind of artists, to try different things. So, and I guess they saw my portfolio online, and he liked it. So he sent me that email. I did the art test, and not too long after that, I think maybe a week later, I got another email saying that I got the job offer. Like they asked me to come in, go visit their office, and there and then they sat me on. You know, I took a basically look around, and they showed me what they were working on, and it was my first time, you know, stepping in a game studio, so it was pretty awesome, pretty crazy. And yeah, like I looked at the things that they were working on, and they explained kind of like their project, and then they offer me a job. So they're like, so would you be interested in working here? I'm like, yeah, but I kind of you know, I'm in school still, so I want to keep doing that. And so we kind of came to an agreement where I would work 20 hours a day, and that's kind of what happened. So they you know, they offered me a certain amount of money per hour, and that was fine for me. You know, I used to just do freelance stuff, so it would pay-ish, but it wasn't anything crazy. So now to have an actual, you know, job that was paying me like a decent salary, that was freaking awesome. And I could do 20 hours a day from home. All I had to do was to come in, I think, every Friday, like in the morning or something like that, because that's when I had a time in my schedule that I could go. To just meet up with them and show them, you know, like what I've been working on, blah blah blah, and see what you know, get like an update of the project on you know, based on what the other guys were doing. So yeah, so that's what we agreed to, and that was kind of like my first time. And then I think it wasn't that long after that I just came in for my first day. It was you know, the first Friday. They had given me a couple of things to do already, so I had been working at home, and then yeah, that first Friday I just came in for the first time. You know, properly introduced myself and then met the entire team. They gave me a tour of the whole place, blah blah, and sat me down to my desk. I had a desk for that I could use for every Friday, and yeah, I showed them my stuff, got some feedback. So that was my first time. It was pretty interesting. I don't think they liked. I don't remember what I did at first, but I don't think they liked most of it. So they had a lot of feedback, and I wasn't used to that. So yeah, that took some getting used to. But I mean, at that point, I was getting really good money for doing something that I really enjoyed anyway, something that I used to do, before I got that job, and I wasn't making a penny for it. It was just for fun. So to me, I was like, it was mind blowing. So whatever they told me, I'm like, yes, sure, I will do it, no problem. Yes, sir. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. So I'm gonna pause the career talk for now and get back to the drawing because interesting things are happening. So as you can see here, I created a new layer on top of the skin layer, and that's just so that I could erase those things if I didn't feel like it, or it's non-destructive. So that's the point with layers. You can have as many as you want, and you can just toggle them on and off, and then things disappear or appear just like this. So for those kind of like holes in their bodies, I wasn't too sure of their placement. Maybe I would move them around, or let's say I'm on the production and I go show that stuff to the art director, and he's like, I like those too, but maybe you can have some like a little bit lower, blah blah blah. Having that on a separate layer, it just makes it so easy to just move stuff around and redo them, as opposed to if I had painted that on the skin layer, I would have to just erase everything or whatever. It'd be a mess. So yeah, work with layers when it makes sense to save time. Just be smart about that. And yeah, so right now, so that was something that was on the initial concept. So that character had a bunch of like weird holes, not really holes, but like the skin is following the weird bone structure underneath. And I thought that was an interesting look for those characters, so I wanted to keep that. So that's why I started with the one on the left here, because she was kind of in a similar position. So I just mimicked the same holes that the other one had. And now I'm working on the front view, so that's why I had this one on the left here where you can kind of see the back. So I get a view of the back of the character and a view in the front here, which is what I'm doing now. So yeah, different layer, still a normal blend mode, and just trying different things. So as you can probably guess, I'm like going with real anatomy, like contouring, in this case contouring like the obliques and having like the holes at the end of it where the abdominal muscles would kind of naturally merge, and similar in the back here, kind of like contouring the back muscles a little bit. And whenever I do designs like this on naked characters, I try to follow the anatomy curves as much as possible, because it's such an easy one. Like, it always kind of works if it looks inspired by anatomy. And in this case especially, the characters are pretty human-like, in proportion. So by having things that follow that same anatomy, even though the details might be a little bit more aliens, like those holes, the holes are in a spot where there's actually a hole that's where the muscle connects. So it would make sense, even if it was human, you could actually see something like that if somebody was really like skinny. So it's just exaggerating a lot things that already are there. It will look different, but it'll still look believable if you follow the base anatomy. So that's the goal. So for this, since the initial inspiration was flowers, I want to have flowers / like leaves, plants. I wanted to have these overlaps, of shapes, of planes almost, where you see you see that very well on the legs here. like almost like stems, like different like leaves kind of like next to each other. So that's yeah, that's also the inspiration for these details. And the way I'm working with these is that you know, since I have them on a separate layer, you can just draw them really rough, and then you erase, like what I'm doing right now, kind of like erasing them a little bit so that they fade into the other layer underneath a little bit better. There you go. So I'm still, yeah, I was still tweaking the legs a little bit. I didn't want to have too much details on the legs because when you have a high frequency of details, it just attracts the eye too much. And of course, I didn't want people to just look at the legs because that's not the focal point of this character. So that's why I was toning it down a little bit more. And those are just those lines, just a continuation of the lines that started in the back and are kind of like going around the shoulders like this. Again, kind of following the curves, you know, of the muscles. Natural flow. So that it look as organic and natural as possible. So yeah, adding, you know, those little highlights here just to make those lines, those creases in the skin pop a little bit more. And for the rest of this chapter is going to be just a little bit more polishing, so making sure that everything looks nice and clean and there's no like brush strokes that are too rough or that don't read well. So yeah, it's going to be more of the same. And the last character on the very right, if you can see in the thumbnail here, the purple one, I'm still gonna have to do the same kind of holes that the other two have, but they've already been figured out at this point, so it's gonna be very simple to just do the same on her. Yeah, I'm just gonna be using the same because the body is supposed to be the same anyway, so easy peasy. All right, now jumping back to what I was saying about, you know, like, I had just gotten the job at this point, and I had come in and did my first day, and everything was pretty awesome. Everything was overwhelming. Everything was new. So I'm gonna try to run you guys through like the first month, and yeah, and what that was like. So I had. So far, you know, I had been working for like a week, so most of it had been at home. I had just came into to the office to show my stuff and to meet the people, to have a proper tour and everything. And like working with people is very different, and that's kind of like what I was mentioning at the very beginning of this tutorial. Having so many people around you suddenly, kind of like looking at what you're doing, because you know their desks and the layout, you can't really choose it. You know, you work there, you just sit there and work, right? But the way it was organized, I was like facing basically everybody, so at any point in time someone could see what I was doing. And you know, as artists, we're all like a little bit self-conscious about our work until we can call it done. So yeah, that was very that was a thing to get used to. So I had to suddenly like detach myself from the work, and it was just like yeah, like approaching it almost in a different way, where it wouldn't look bad. It wouldn't look too bad for most of the time. So like a smaller increments of, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but yeah, it was a different way of working than what I was used to. So. But yeah, so what the team looked like back then is there was 2 3D artists, there was 1 programmer, there was 1 concept artist for mostly characters, I think. She was like, she had a background in comics, so she was doing yeah, some of the characters and the monsters. And there was a producer and a game director, and that was it. So it was really, and the game and the art director that had contacted me, and that was it. So that was the team. I was the first, like, really the first concept artist to do like digital art. The other artist was doing mostly 2D, mostly traditional. So I was the first one that did digital, woo, and I was doing two characters and environments, both at the, yeah, that was all me. So there was no environment artist, there was no character artist. I was kind of doing both. So I think my first task, that's what it was, an environment, and that was challenging because I'd never done any. But yeah, anyway, so my position there was basically, I was like the concept artist for all things they needed. So the project that I had been brought on was a kind of joint project with Cirque du Soleil, which never, came to fruition. Never bore any fruits. Oh boy. Anyways, so that didn't work out, but it was a lot of fun because there was we constantly had meetings with them, and then there was one of their concept artists that would come on site at the office to kind of share his ideas, and then we kind of like back and forth with them, like bounce ideas. So yeah, at the beginning, the one thing that I would say though is that my case was probably not typical, in the sense that I joined a pre-prod, which is I would say it's a big gamble on their side. Like, if I wouldn't have hired me at all back then, I got lucky, I guess. But yeah, so I got on a team where I was one of only 2 artists that could draw, and that was scary. So I didn't have a mentor for the longest time. The 3D artists there were pretty good, so they definitely helped me out, and they helped me with 3D, which actually made a big impact in my career. But back then, as a concept artist, it was a little bit rough because I didn't have anybody to really look up to other than the other concept artist on my team, which was doing just traditional. So I had to step up my game, basically. So it was pretty stressful in that sense, where everything depended on me. So if my concept sucked, like I didn't have another concept artist, like they didn't have another concept artist to be like, okay, well, this one maybe not, but we'll pick that concept from this other guy. It was just my stuff. So if that didn't work, I had to redo it, and yeah, that was a little bit rough. But working week after week, doing my 20 hours a week of work at home, and most of the time it was more like 30 hours that I would put in, just to be sure that I was able to create content I was proud of, because that's something that will not happen when you start working. You're probably not gonna be proud of whatever you're doing for the longest time until you get in the groove of the project, and adapt to the new style, adapt to the new direction. So it takes a little bit of time. So at the beginning, that's what I remember. Like, it was a lot of forcing myself to adapt to their workflow, checking in very often, to the point where I'm not comfortable at all to check in like that often. That's something that I hated at the beginning. I remember, like, always, being always reminded to, hey, don't forget to send us your stuff. We want to see what you're working on. That was a little bit hard to adapt to, but I was getting paid. I was supposed to be a professional now, so that's what you got to do. So yeah, and then shortly after I joined, like maybe a few weeks after, there was other animators, and another animator joined, and then I think another concept artist joined maybe a few months after that. And so now I had like proper mentors, and that helped a lot. So anyways, I was doing a lot of concepts. That was fun. It was stuff that I wasn't really good at, I guess, because I was doing a lot of environment, some character art, but a lot of environment. And I would stay after work continuously, because I wasn't fulfilled as an artist. So you know, on the Fridays, instead of going out and drinking, I would just stay at work and just kind of, or stay at school, wherever I was, and do more art, you know, do more personal stuff and keep updating my portfolio. And anyways, so I did that for a couple months, I think about 6 months, and then you know, doing the school and working at the same time. And after a while, I just started to realize, like, what am I doing? I'm already working. There's really no point in finishing school, because what am I gonna do after that? Like, search for a job in the game industry? I already have one. So yeah, I decided to drop out. And so I went to my boss, and I'm like, hey, so I'm thinking of coming in on, I'm coming full time. Is that something that you guys are okay with? So they were a little bit surprised, because I don't think they had, you know, planned the budget, because I wasn't supposed to finish school for another year and a half, something like that. And back then I was studying, I was in the 3D animation class, so it was I did the first year of that class. I was not working back then, so that was the first year I wasn't working. But it was only 2D, so it was 2D animation, so not super relevant to what I was gonna do in my career. And then the second year, for the first 6 months of that second year, that's when I was working at the same time. So it was the first 6 months of the second year of that program, I was starting to learn Maya, which was kind of what I was, you know, in that program for. I wanted to learn 3D, because I had been, you know, fascinated with that. So while I started to learn that, and you know, realizing that none of my teachers really had any work experience other than like really like old comics and like old cartoons, very 2D heavy backgrounds. None of them had been in the game industry, so I didn't see it was going anywhere really. I couldn't really see the value in school anymore. So yeah, that's why I came to my boss like this and asked them to go full time. They didn't give me an answer right away, so I was a little bit worried about that. They're like, let us think about that a little while. So, but yeah, and a week later they gave me the full offer, you know, like a salaried position, and that was awesome. So I started to work full time. I said bye bye to school, and that's when it got interesting. So that's yeah, that was about 6 months after starting, and now I was already, you know, I had come into work for many days at that point. There was no more working from home, so no stress, no deadline coming up. I was just go to work in the morning and then do my hours, and then to stay after work a little while, work on my own stuff, and then come back home, rinse, repeat. And then it was yeah, it was a whole new world, progressing a lot faster with you know, being surrounded by a bunch of talented people, and working on cool stuff. So that's yeah, that was kind of my first couple months working. And now I am going to again pause on that topic, and we're gonna pick that up a little bit later when I make my move to Blizzard. But now let's get back to our concept here. So as you can see, there's a new layer that popped up, which is glow, and that glow layer is just it's very subtle. It was just to add a little bit of glow to the chest area, to emphasize that a little bit on all three characters, and then add the tip of the like their hair thingy to make those glow a little bit more. So that layer is set to overlay, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So now I'm just cleaning up like the stray brush strokes that might still be on the canvas. I just want to make sure that it's all as clean as possible. So I'm selecting everything with the magic wand, and deleting everything but the reverse selection, so that, you know, if there's any stray brush strokes or like remain of like a soft brush stroke that you can hardly see, at least that's gonna pick it up and it's gonna erase it. So now I'm almost done with these three. So one of the last things I wanted to do is to get a better point of view on the back kind of layout of the characters for all the little holes. So, you know, again, it's one of those things where if you don't see it really well, if it's a little bit ambiguous, always make sure to design it, to draw it out, so that there's no questions. So I wasn't, since her hair is covering part of it and she's at a weird angle, I just wanted to make sure of the design of those little like holes thing on her back. So that's what I'm drawing here. That's the back view for her. So I'm just gonna draw that out real quick, so that if a 3D artist comes after me and has to model this out, there's not gonna be any doubt. But yeah, I mean, as far as the characters go, I'm really happy with the colors. That would be a pretty cool color choice that you could swap to if it were a game, or those could easily be the same race walking in in the movie. Let's say like an Avatar style movie. You can kind of tell they're all the same. They come from the same thing, but they're slightly different and their colors are a little bit different. But it kind of works. So that's a success from that point of view. So at this stage, it's I've been basically, well, I haven't, but if I were working, I would have been in a lot of back and forth with the designers and the art directors, like art responsible people, to make sure that this is approved before I move to this step where it's almost like done, right? So but now that it's done, let's say those have been approved and I made some modifications based on their feedback, whatever, and this is the final result. So now I'm just gonna dress them up, right? So what I'm thinking about these is that, let's say you're playing a video game like World of Warcraft or Skyrim or like even Eve, where you have like a character customization menu at the beginning, where you get to create your character. Or let's say you have like equipment that you can equip on and off. You'll always have kind of like a base version of the character. So that's what I'm working on right now. So like the naked version, like not the naked, but the version with underwear. So if she removes all her equipment, what she would look like basically. And that's what it would be. So she wouldn't be naked, obviously. So yeah, that's what I'm drawing, and those would be the same for the other characters. I don't think there's a need, unless the game somehow has features around that. I don't think there's a need for to have different underwear for all the characters. Yeah, unless it's a customization option for some reason in the game. But we're gonna consider that it's not, so I'm just gonna make one variation in this particular case. So as you can see here, the layer that I have, it's on, I'm calling it undies, and it's set to multiply. And what I'm using is just a light, kind of like a light purple, so that it multiplies with the body underneath, basically. And what that does is that it retains all the shadows, all the shading that I did previously, so I don't have to do it again. Because if I were using a flat layer or like a normal mode layer, I would have to add that all those highlights back again. So it's a little cheat. So save me some time. So I don't want to spend like crazy amount of time on this because it's just underwear and it's probably not going to be seen much in the game if that was a game, and maybe on only certain occasions if it was a movie. But I do want to spend a little bit of time on it at least, so that in the rare occasions where we actually see it, it doesn't look like complete garbage. But yeah, so now that I have 3 different versions, so I have one body type but 3 different colors, 3 different faces, and 3 different haircuts. If we were to combine all of those and create all the possible options just out of these 3 different things, and 3 different variations for these 3 different things, you would get like 27 possible combinations out of just this, which is not much. So that's why I'm saying like the number 3 is a good number to get a good idea of what it could potentially be at scale, because by doing very little, really, you get a lot of mileage out of it. Alright, now that we have our 3 variations here pretty much done, what we're going to be doing is creating some extra color variations because we want to, try to get as much mileage as possible as what we have. So what we're going to do is I merged everything now, and we are going to be duplicating those three on the side here, like this. I'm going to erase the extra bit of line art that's left. Alright, and I am going to do the same thing again. There we go. Okay, so now we have quite the lineup. What I'm going to be doing basically is just having all of the different, kind of like base versions here use the other two color variations. So we're going to start off with the middle in here. So very, very simple initially, at least. We're going to try to do if a Control U will do the thing. So it's just switching the hue. So I'm going to do the first batch is going to be, all pink. So like the center version here, kind of like the main version. So something like this. A little bit of saturation. Alright, it's close enough, so we can work with that. And I'm going to do the same thing here. The last version is going to use pink as well. Switch to that one. Actually, I can merge everything at this point. So everything that's the same thing. So all the base layer and all the glow. The glow is on hard light. I'm gonna set that back to hard light. All right. Now I'm gonna Control Q again. Try to see if I can get a nice pink version. Something like this. So pink with purple legs. All right. Looks pretty good already, without much work. And so real quick, we're gonna do the same thing with the other versions. So in the center here, let's see. This one is going to be. Let's switch it to the purple version. So kind of like this one. So again, drag that towards purple and blue, something like that as a base. And now we're going to do the same thing with this one. Control hue, try to make it a little bit more purple. Maybe add a little bit of saturation. Alright, something like that. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to change this one here to green. So if we look at the original here, kind of like what we're getting inspired by is this one here. So like light purple, like violet, and like green legs. So maybe something like this. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then we are going to do the same thing with the last one, this one here. So this one is going to be the green one. And after that, we'll have all our variations, and then we'll be able to do the kind of like the final tweaks to make them look a little bit better than just a Control hue shift in colors. So yeah, maybe. And this is actually pretty cool to like try other colors, things that we haven't tried yet. So maybe like kind of like this color here we haven't had yet. So yeah, maybe I'll go for something like this. A little bit more green. So now you can imagine if you were playing in a game, you'll be able to select kind of like your base body basically. So all of these bodies are the same, but you could be able to kind of like customize the face. You'll be able to swap between the three faces, and then you'll be able to swap between the three different colors for the base skin. And then you know, probably again be able to do the same thing with the hair. So switch the haircut to customize your character. And of course, this is pretty basic, right? But that's what we want to plan for something like this. At least have something that works, and then you can make it a little bit more complex if you want. So next, we're going to be changing, kind of like adjusting the glows a little bit so that they match the new colors. So in this case here, we go for something pink. Okay. And this one here, something a little bit more purple. So right now I'm selecting, you know, I have the glow layer selected. That's why. Okay. So I'm going to switch to blue and turquoise. Like this. And here, so this is supposed to be the purple version. I'm going to switch to purple glow. Alright, so there we go. So now we have pretty good base colors. You could be, you know, you could go in here and adjust kind of like the glows a little bit to match a little bit more. So in this case, you know, I might want to do something like this, kind of paint over it to make it work a little bit better. Same thing, you know, you might want to tweak the hair a little bit. Because some of the gradients don't translate too well when you just do a shift in hue and a shift in color. Sometimes you want to spend a little bit more time, give it a little bit more love. Alright, something like this. So that's looking pretty interesting. I'm gonna fix her hair here. Something like this one, you know, had kind of like the really like purple, violet tips. I'm gonna do the same thing, make sure I lock the layer. Go something like a color, maybe color mode, and color that hair a little bit more. So maybe also a little bit of multiply, make it a little bit darker to match the original version. Like this. A little bit more pink, maybe. At the roots. Okay. So, you know, basically you're just trying to imagine this one here next to that one here, and they should be, I know at first glance they should look like they have the same skin color, right? Exactly the same one. So that's why I'm just trying to adjust kind of like the pink, the colors, so that they match as much as possible. Maybe a little bit more blue color, like that. So yeah, using like a kind of like a mix of color blend modes and you know, overlay or multiply. Normally you'll be able to get what you want with this. Not screen though. Alright, so now they're pretty close. So I'd be happy with this. Maybe adjust the tips a little bit more. Alright. So this one here, the center one, definitely not quite like this one here. So would need a little bit more of that, you know, that purple color in there. It's a little bit too blue at the moment. I mean, a little bit too much, too turquoise. Want to go multiply, darken the feet a little bit so that they match a little bit better. And switch to color. Color those shadows. The other one. Now it's starting to be a little bit closer. So we want to adjust the hair again. The hair color didn't translate too well. It's supposed to be purple. And go to overlay. Paint in a little bit of that purple. This. Alright, and now that's a lot closer now, so I think we can stop here. So those two now look like they're pretty much the same skin color. Let's see, this one here already looks pretty good, so I'm gonna just tweak the feed here to go to a more like bluish color rather than the green that she has currently, but yeah, it's pretty close already. Not much to do here. And that is pretty good. So yeah, so those three now look like they kind of belong, which is good. And let's see what we have now. This one here, to fit, just needs a little bit more purple on the legs. We're gonna do that. So just switch the color. Go a little bit more towards purple. I mean, other than that, she's already a pretty good match. So we get a lot of that pink and purple color. So yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit more darkness to the tip here of the hair so that the hair matches a little bit better, but she's, you know, really close already. A little bit multiply to darken it in certain areas. And yeah, all good. So the next one, and pretty much the final one, is the green. So the green version here, we can see we might want to add a little bit more purple around the hips. Because the green starts to come in a little bit later, a little bit lower in the body. Something like that. And her face is a little bit dark now, so I'm gonna brighten that up. Like that. And try to get the glow again. Glow from the stomach. Back in there. And there we go. So color-wise, pretty satisfied with this. Hands maybe. Alright, and now yeah, the last one is this one here, matching that green a little bit more. And her face now is very blue, so you want to always have a little bit of, you know, like warmer tones in the face, because, you know, there's blood coming there, and their blood, I would think, even though their skin colors, you know, like weird colors, the blood is still red, so you would still see like hints of that red in the face. It gives it a little bit more life. And then yeah, I'm just gonna match kind of like the rest of the colors. This. Add the highlights for the stomach. This one needs slightly darker legs, kind of like this. gonna go for a little bit more of a pink, not pink, but a purple face. Alright, so that's pretty good now. So I am pretty happy with the results. So we got a nice lineup, and we can see that, you know, that skin color can be applied to all the different bodies, and then you get a lot more variations, you know, out of just basically three base versions. So very good exercise to do this, and I'm gonna just rearrange those a little bit better. So there we go. Now we can see that, you know, all the different color skins kind of like really work pretty well with all the different body variations, and so that's what we were looking for. And yeah, we're pretty much done with this race now. So we've designed, you know, like the base body and some different variations for the face, for the hair, and for the skin. So for that body type, for that particular, you know, body type in the scope of this tutorial, we would be done. So moving on, we'd be talking about how to dress her up and what kind of armor she's gonna wear.